How do you figure out what you're good at?
Yeah, love it. You need to build your self-awareness, and there are a variety of ways to do it. Like a designer, if you want to learn about the user, you need to talk with your users. So maybe you need to ask yourself some questions. I do some journaling. I was also going back to my brag document with the list of projects and accomplishments, checking my personality, strengths test. Skills mapping is a common exercise. So this is how you judge it. Of course, it's very easy to manipulate those answers. When you, like Kenny, I actually applied to this leadership position with my junior experience. But you need to be honest with yourself, because this is actually better to know yourself, and not only for a portfolio, but also for selling yourself in a recruitment process, for building your self-confidence as well. And I think just collecting your achievements. I have my Notion document for this, where I note my accomplishments, but it can be anything. It can be a Google Doc, a jar with your sticky notes with successes. And when it comes to journaling, I can recommend one app. There is a Day One app, so you can create your own templates and do it regularly, even on the phone.
I would add to this with two things to think about. I think the first thing is like, what have you spent time doing? Like, if you've done something X number of times and they're pretty damn good and you're pretty fast at doing them, then that's one place that you can figure it out. And then the other part is what you're good at is you might not be good at it now, but because you're so interested in it and you're just like fascinated with the thing, you almost kind of lose yourself in doing that task. Well, you're not good at it now, but you kind of aspire to be good at it, whether it's kind of like messing around on Figma, playing around with icon design. Okay, we have another. When thinking about how to present your personal brand, how do you stand out? Things like customer focused and problem solver seem to be generic nowadays.
Yes, that's correct.
I read that so much and I'm just like, oh my God, not again.
Imagine that you are this hiring manager and you get 100 applications with exactly this statement. Then it's very, very hard for hiring managers to actually quickly select when you are actually not clearly communicating your key skills and values. And if you want to do it and stand out, there are a couple of ways, like figuring out what you're good at. There is this concept about the T-shaped designer. Maybe this is the way how you might think about finding this way to stand out, like some core skills that you want to highlight, because right now it seems like majority of us actually cover the whole design process. Like, we probably should know something about research, about design, but what are those elements that make you unique? Like, maybe it's coming from your experiences, maybe it's coming from your passions. You can also stand out in a visual way. So the first one is the wording and what you tell us, but the second is what you show and how you show it. There are some portfolios that are very visual, and you can just see that the person is very high on craft and it's very visual, adding some illustrations. Then you can clearly see that they don't need to write about this. Of course, the problem is this is actually in a sense easy, right? Because it's very like this is the first thing we judge, and if someone is good at this, it's very easy to shape. But when you don't want to highlight the craft as much, or you're like, okay, you are good at visual design, but maybe not that much to highlight this, then we are going probably lean towards more abstract skills, right? Like research. So you need to think about how you can visually present this. Maybe you can show an example, or maybe what type of font you will pick, how you will lay out this. All of those things can lean towards standing out.
I have a framework that basically I stole from the Ikigai, and I've probably said this a bunch of times.
The Venn diagram.
Yes, it's that Venn diagram. Design and skill at the top in that circle, and then what you love to do, your interests, your passions, and then the things you're good at, things you spend time on. And then wherever that intersection is. So imagine you spend 5 minutes brainstorming on each of these circles, and then you basically map words together for it to make sense. So I did this myself, and I think I'm good at working fast. And then what a designer needs is the top circle. Is, well, designers get paid to ship. So if I was to position myself and stand out and write that sort of designer profile, is like, I work fast to ship MVPs for startups, for example. Right? That's just one way to do that. But I think there are a bunch of other ways that you mentioned to help you stand out. Okay, this one is interesting. Is there an information structure you recommend for your portfolio?
There are different storytelling frameworks: the Freytag's pyramid, it or some hero's journey. I've tested many of them, and I feel like 3-arc story structure to be the easiest concept to understand. I recommend for projects to state the problem and then decide on the design changes you want to communicate. Variety of ways you can present the design changes, from broad to selecting some specific design changes you made and wrapping up with retrospective. But this is just one way of doing this. I think it's more about you need to somehow introduce this reader, hiring manager, your users to the topic that they weren't in this project with you. So you need to provide them with some context. To this context, I mean, you also need to introduce like, okay, put the project and the problem area into some context, like which industry, what you did there, and so on. Communicating clearly the problem is a big challenge for many. I usually recommend highlighting maybe one key problem and focusing on this instead of listing 10 problems that you solve, because when you review a portfolio very quickly, it's very hard to figure out what actually the problem was that you solved. So being very clear about prioritization, and design changes is also prioritization. But of course, you can flip the order. I think it's more about thinking this person doesn't know anything about the project, so how do I introduce this? Or maybe how do I engage this person within my story? Sometimes designers question the status quo and they start from something else than summary. So yeah, I think that's 3-arc story structure, trying to clearly communicate what you have done and accomplished in this project, the design changes, and what problem you solved. I think these are the key elements usually I look for when I review stories. But the way how you communicate this can vary.
Is the first view of a portfolio a hiring manager? I was told it's a recruiter who's the first user. That's who we have to understand their positioning. So how do you feel about this?
This depends on.
Want to listen to the full conversation? Click the video on screen now. Subscribe to the channel if you want to join us live. Oh, wait. Okay, fine, you don't have to join us for the live stream, but if you like stuff like this, then click that subscribe button. I'll see you on the inside. Bye!